If I was 5 years from retirement, I wouldn't be guessing anymore, because small things left too late can create real pressure later on. So let me walk you through what I'd focus on first, while there's still time to act. At the 5 year mark, things start to change. You're no longer just building wealth, you're starting to depend on it. And this is where a lot of people get caught out, and it's something I see quite a lot in practice. People get close to retirement and realise they've been focused on the wrong things. They assume, if I've got enough in super, I'll be fine. But unfortunately, retirement doesn't work like that. It's not just about how much you have, it's about how you turn that into income. Because two people with the same balance can end up in very different positions. And that's where people get caught out. And if those pieces aren't lined up properly, you can end up in a position where you've got enough money, but it doesn't feel like it. So, if I was 5 years out, this is where I'd be focusing. The first thing is clarity, not a rough idea, but a clear understanding of what your retirement actually costs, because this drives everything. If you're planning to spend around $80,000 a year, that's very different to needing $120,000, and that difference flows through everything. It changes how much you need, how much risk you take, and when you can retire. So this is where everything starts. I see this a lot with clients. Someone might say, I think I'll be fine with around $90,000, but when we break it down properly, it might be closer to $120,000, and that gap matters more than people expect. Now, once you've got that number, the next step is making sure your assets actually support it, because you do not want to reduce your lifestyle in retirement. So this is important, because most people are still invested like they're 10 or 15 years away from retirement. They've taken on a level of risk that made sense while they were building, but now they're getting closer to needing that money, and the timing starts to matter. If markets fall just before or after retirement, that can have a lasting impact on how long your money lasts, because you're not drawing on those investments, not building them, and that timing is what makes the difference. So it's not about becoming conservative overnight, but it is about understanding how your portfolio behaves and whether it's aligned with what's coming next. Then there's your structure, and this is one of those parts that's often overlooked. It's not just what you have, it's how it's set up. Super, pension accounts, personal investments, they're all treated differently from a tax and income perspective. And small changes here can have a meaningful difference. Not just on how much tax you pay, but in how much income you actually keep. For example, two people with the same balance can end up with very different outcomes, simply because of how things are structured. And that flows through to how much money they actually keep. That's why structure matters more than people expect. And this is why planning ahead is so important, because 5 years out, you still have time to adjust things properly. The other big area is debt. If you're heading into a retirement with a mortgage, that changes everything, because now your investments aren't just funding your lifestyle, they're also funding your debt. And that increases pressure on your portfolio. So this is where you start asking, should I be reducing debt faster, or does it make more sense to invest? Now that is a question I can't answer here, but ignoring it usually leads to a worse outcome. And finally, flexibility, because even with a good plan, things change. Markets move, spending changes, life happens. So if I was 5 years out, I want a plan that isn't just perfect on paper, but one that can adjust when things change. This is where it becomes more than just numbers. It's about knowing, what can I spend comfortably? What can I adjust if I have to? And how do I avoid making emotional decisions under pressure? Because that's what actually protects your retirement. Not just having enough, but knowing how to use it properly. And just quickly, this is general in nature. So it's important to consider your own situation before making any decisions. So if I bring this together, if I was 5 years from retirement, I wouldn't be chasing higher returns. I wouldn't be making big changes late. I'd be focusing on clarity, structure, risk, and flexibility. Because getting those right is what turns having enough into actually feeling comfortable and ready for retirement. And if you're approaching retirement and want structured guidance rather than trying to figure this out alone, I work with Australians in exactly that position. You can find details below.